Morning, everyone. We are back again for our Tuesday ritual, which we have Tuesday webinars, which we do from 11 to 12. And I'm hoping all of you are staying safe, staying healthy, whichever mode of work that you guys have chosen, whether it's work from home or work from office. Today we are, I think the theme remains, is in continuation with the theme that we've been playing out for the last 5 weeks, which is about putting India back to work. It's an absolute imperative right now to get the economy going, to get economic activity going, to get people back to jobs. And hence, for today's discussion, we have Mr. Nilankur Mazumdar. He is Senior General Manager HR for Johnson Controls with us. We also have Mr. Kartik Iyer, who is AVP and Head of Procurement for Total India. While we are talking about putting India to work, my interest during the course of this webinar would be to delve a little bit about the digital transformation and how that could possibly play a role in putting India back to work. So first I'll start with you, Nilankur. Do give us an overview of your business and the work that you're doing. And side by side, as businesses resume gradually, how are you stabilizing between employee well-being, customer centricity, essentially business and employee engagement, How is technology assisting you in striking this balance? At all, do you think there is room for technology to enable this balance?
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Ritu. Good morning to you as well. And I'm Nilankur Mazumdar. I am with Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls is a US-based organization. We are present across 135 countries, and our major business or our business line is majorly in building technologies and solutions. When we're building technology solutions, we do everything about to make a building smarter, comfortable, safe, and secure. We do not construct a building, but once a building is constructed, everything which makes a building intelligent, a building self-sufficient in terms of security, fire, air conditioning, energy consumption, lighting integration, everything which is related to automation. That's what we are into, and we have a hell lot of products around that, as well as an integrated solutions to make part of a smarter building, or which is part of a smart city and green buildings and things like that. So I represent the engineering center. We are part of the global products, and which is the largest engineering center out of US, and we work with all the product units of Johnson Controls and do the core product development based out of India. I'm based out of Pune, and well, that's about my business, and I am part of the HR function for this particular business. Answering your question, Ritu, yes, I would rather break it up like we have been leaping towards, if I take care of Johnson Controls, we have been focusing a lot on the technology transformation for some time, even before the COVID-19 situation came in. We call ourselves a technology solution company, where we provide technology solutions. So here internally also, we have been moving into that realm a lot. This particular scenario has kind of forced us or pushed us to make rapid changes. And yes, the major focus out here has been during the first phase was to get people work from home, to do a firefighting, get the business continuity in place and things like that. Once that was done, we have been focusing a lot towards the recovery in terms of focusing on employee communications, focusing on employee emotional well-being, reimagining the way where we work and how we work, prioritize and gradually think of prioritizing a return to a work site criteria, enable the facilities, enable workforce, and adapting to new customer needs. That's the most important part for us, which we have been focusing as well. So two focal length, one was employee well-being, and second was the customer partnership. And that's where we brought in the technology in terms of developing platforms to reach out to our customers, except for areas like we do have to do a lot of servicing and project related where people are required. But in more other places, we are connecting with our customers virtually and partnering with them. Same, we are using it for our employees who are spread across globally, and how we have been like communicating in terms of what is the new normalcy, what are the different ways how we can come back, ensuring their well-being is paramount, reaching out to them through the people managers and things like that. So with these two focal points, I think so the only common bondage has been using technology to the fullest capability. And even we have been doing our town halls, our CEOs have been doing our town halls using Microsoft Teams and things like that. So that's what I would like to start off with a brief introduction. I hope that answers your question, Ritu.
Sure, thank you so much, Nilankur. Kartik, over to you now. Let's hear a little bit about you, your company, and also how have you been able to leverage the digital evolution that has happened during COVID to kind of help balance between employee engagement, employee concerns, and ensure business continuity?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, participants. Good morning, Ritu, and thank you for inviting me for this webinar. Just to give a quick brief introduction about me, I'm Kartik Iyer. I've been with Total Oil and Gas for the last 2 years. Just to give a quick background about Total, Total is one of the 7 oil majors across the globe, and of course, it does not have a huge presence in India, which is basically dominated by the national oil companies. But overall in the world, it's close. It's the 4th or the 5th largest oil company. I'll just focus specifically to India. In India, Total is mainly present in the lubricants business, and it also has a good presence in the LPG business down south in the southern part of India. Plus, Total is also a part of one of the bitumen business, and of course, special fluids. So we have a few, of course, you would have heard in the news recently that Total is currently joining hands with Adani and to set up retail stations. So that's the quick background in terms of what Total is, and especially within the Indian subcontinent. About me, I head the procurement for Total Oil India, and I mean, my experience is also into procurement for the last 13 years. With reference to getting back to work, I'll just, I'll second the point which Nilankur made, that I think the most important thing which Total is looking at is the safe being of the employee when they are getting back to work. Of course, it's not been easy, to be really honest. I think generally this is the common issue which most of the companies which are facing, is they have to divide their workforce between A, B, and C. And if someone gets infected in one of these groups, I think the entire group has to be quarantined. So these are the practical challenges, which most of the companies are facing. Of course, we have put things in a plan, put things in action, but because of these roadblocks where we don't even know, a lot of places we have talks about lockdowns coming in again. Especially fresh lockdown was notified in Chennai and in our area. So these are some dynamic changes in which we have to adapt to. So with all this getting back to work, it's getting, people are doing it. People are following the government norms, but it is not, it is going to be challenging, at least for the foreseeing future, at least for the next few months. Having said so, with all this in I mean, with what's happening around, of course, technology has played a big part. I'm not going to discuss in very detail about each and everything, but generally, I would say that, as an organization, we were well prepared. Uh, so, we had Teams, we had Microsoft Outlook, we had configured our emails on the phone. Most of the people had laptops. Even for people who did not have laptops, a desktop was delivered to their respective places. So generally, as an organization, we were well prepared to face this pandemic. And I think there's one drawback about team is that it cannot host more than 250 people. So in these situations, we have an alternative solution which was used for all these town hall meetings and stuff. So now, just focusing on getting back to work, I think one of the biggest thing which people would be facing is, most of the places in India have these biometric systems where you have to use fingerprints, and this could be a possible challenge going ahead in the future. So now I think people are thinking about new ideas, new thing, whether we could have face scanners coming in within work, and so which could recognize an employee. So the idea is it's not even about the attendance marking these biometrics or these face scanners. It's basically to see where the employee is, whether the employee is safe, whether the employee is in office or is not in office. So tomorrow, in case of any specific challenges, the employee could be traced. Second thing, which is also going around in the market is is that you have to maintain a 6 feet distance. So possibly a lot of companies are looking at giving like watches or some devices, which will alert you when you are within 6 feet distance of an employee. Maybe it could vibrate, and so it will basically intimate you. So these are some things which are currently being used by different companies across the globe, and or these are being tested at this point of time. So even before talking about, talking about economy and how things are going on, I think the utmost importance for most of the companies at this point of time is the employee safety and employee well-being. And so that is something which has been focused upon, and I think definitely technology will play a big role in these cases at this point of
time. Thank you very much, both of you. I think moving on, I think I don't know. I think one of the things which have emerged because of the lockdown is that many of our employees in some organization, 100%, some organization, maybe 70, 80%, I think we have been forced to move to a remote working model or a work from home working model. And because of this, have you in your workspaces, in your organization, faced these challenges? And if you had some of these challenges or whatever they may be, what have you done in terms of approaching these challenges with a solution? Any advice, any suggestions, anything that I think the larger group who are attending today's call can take help from and get guided by? Any thoughts on that? Nilankur, I'll start with you on that.
Okay, Ritu. Yes, I think today we are in a scenario where we have been talking about till last year or till 6 months back, all of us were talking about remote working. We are talking about digitally connected and so on and so forth. Those were all, the futuristic talk. And suddenly we are facing a scenario where we are living the future, and that's good. One good thing about the pandemic is it's really brought in multiple disruptions into a reality, and people were, let us be honest, none of us were prepared for it. Why organizations, even governments across the globe, name anyone, no one was prepared for this kind of rapid disruption which is coming. But having said that, when people, I won't use the word challenges. I would rather use the word people are, or we, I can talk from Johnson Controls point of view. Now it's the time for us to think differently. Yes, we are considering scenarios when we are back. Do we work with entire 100% capacity? I don't think at this moment 100% capacity is something which anyone is thinking about today. I'm not including the manufacturing setup because they have a complete different format. But for organizations who are mostly into engineering, core services and things like that, remote work management is the new term which is now emerging. It was always there. It is the so-called more being socialized. We get a lot of new languages, which is making acronyms, which are coming up these days. So remote work management, persona management in terms of based on your role, what kind of persona are you? So your role defines if you're an HR professional, if you are a service professional, if you are a developer, if you are a person receiving calls from your technicians. So different kind of personas are being created in the organization, and based on this, your physical workspace is defined. So either it can be work from anywhere, work from home, or coming to a workplace for a limited period of time, or someone stuck with office, working with your labs or working with your customers at the project site. So different kind of, assessment of different roles, job roles, which we are doing it. So it is a learning in process. But more importantly, I would like to point out for everyone, it is new. And like any transformation which goes through, it is not just the cultural transformation. It is a transformation which involves your business processes, your, there would be some effect on the domain you're working, and the overall adaptation or adoption to the new scenario. So I would rather say it is the organizations. So we constantly use this word, adapt, agile, and resilience. In Johnson Controls, we're using these three constantly, whether it is people well-being, whether it is the new normalcy, the new way of doing things. That's how we are driving in the agility. That's how we are driving in adaptation. So I would not use again the word challenge, but I would use that how fast, how quickly you are moving to the new scenario and adapting to it.
Good. Kartik, how about you? I mean, how have you inferred this new phenomena of remote working, work from home, and that because yours being the kind of organization it is, did it pose certain challenges? And if it did, how did you go about, solving for them? Before that, before Kartik comes in, I would request all those who are attending this session, participants, if you have any questions, please make use of the Q&A tab and post your questions there as we speak. And right at the end, we try and address as many of them as possible. Yes, Kartik, go on.
Yes. So, see, of course, any oil and gas industry, it's not completely service related. It's mainly a manufacturing firm. So, of course, all 100% of our employees cannot work from home. And tomorrow, especially LPG was one of the essential services. So people had to report into work. And yes, it's I won't say it's been a challenge. I'm not going to speak about the technological challenges in which people have faced with reference to the internet connections or the availability of respective hardwares. I think the one where I would be specifically would like to focus upon is, I'm sure people would agree that 9 out of 10 people would agree that whilst we've started working from home, the workload has increased. And it's been, no one has, this has been one of the biggest surprising factors for the industry. And now people are asking, why has that happened? I'm sure the economy, the requirement is not that huge, but still, our workload is just a lot. There could be a lot of factors in this. I mean, I would just like to focus on the few factors, and of course, these are these things which could be posed as a challenge. First is because we are working from home, we are expected to be available 24/7. The people have started pinging in after office hours over the weekends, and so this and especially, and this is something where you're obliged to respond to. Second thing is, I'm sure not a lot of companies in India have a specific work from home policy to say into what could be done, what should not be done, and so this is something which of course a lot of companies will start looking into going ahead in the future. And because this is extremely important, because I mean, unless and until you have a policy, you have everything in place, people will not, I mean, they would not know how to specifically respond to these situations. And I think so these are few things I believe that I think generally as a these are the challenges which we are facing. And with this extreme situations, which what we are facing, I think we are supposed to run out for buying essentials. Especially now, I guess things are a bit more opened up, but especially during the start of the pandemic, maybe the market was only open for a few hours, and it could have been open during the working hours. So people had to adjust to their work life. People had to adjust to their houses, and so and ensure that I think everything is in order. So these were, I think, a few challenges per se, which I would like to specifically highlight, which generally people faced during this pandemic.
Yeah, thank you so much. So moving on, I think there's been a lot of talk about migration that has been going on. Many of our guest workers in different cities and states, in different job roles, have been seen to be going back home. Now, I think because of this reverse migration narrative, the reverse migration reality in some cases, it has led to unveiling of this rural job scheme where the government is working with about 116 district administrations and planning the creation of formal jobs in rural industries. Do you see that this resulting in any kind of shortage of workers in the cities? And do you think that that would have some kind of impact on businesses and your specific industries? Also to add, I mean, I was reading a story which has come up today itself on Mint that actually rural employment has gone up dramatically. I mean, which is a great news. And most of the migrant laborers apparently have been absorbed because of the monsoon being on time. There is a lot of work, honestly, in the villages. So what's your perspective on it? Nilankur, I'll start with you on this.
Sure. I'll answer your question in two different parts. The first part is, which was your second part of the question, is that how do you foresee this reverse migration affecting the industry which Johnson Control is or where we are working today? The answer is, in Indian context, yes. We are related to a lot of construction and heavy where there are large reality working, whether commercial or hospitals or colleges coming up. Yes, that's wherever there is a building infrastructure development, we are there. So yes, this would cause some kind of a issue because we would, I think so, this construction industry would face a big vacuum in terms of laborers. The semi-skilled and kind of laborers, unskilled laborers, I do not perceive much of change because that is locally available, but semi-skilled laborers would be greatly missing. And that is yet to see that how that actually affects the industry per se, because infrastructure is a sector which is looking out for a lot of boom. Maybe not the reality, but the overall infrastructure. Now, answering the first part of your question, it is from a larger economy perspective. I would say it's a good scenario for multiple reasons. One, now there will be a lot of, yes, this work is seasonal. Good, the monsoon has set in, it was always there, then the winters would come in, there would be always requirement of people at their home state in the agri field. But if you leave alone agri field alone, there are a lot of these states which are focusing on infrastructure developments in terms of building up roads, in terms of building up manufacturing setups, industrial development setups, etc., to attract investments from other countries. So it is a good thing for the economy because no one is going to sit idle. That is point number one. Point number two, the big cities, the so-called the top 5 or 10 cities in this country, which had the maximum number of guest workers and migrant workers working in them, they would get innovative. They would try to fill up this gap. They'll also try to woo in the laborers by some kind of incentive and subs, which we have been reading for the last couple of months. But interestingly, one factor is that, and I read about it in one of the articles, no one knows for sure, all right? Because if you go by the behavioral science per se, if we wait for another 1 year time frame, we need to see where does all the government policies and the state policies kicking in, and are they getting the right kind of employment out there? Because after a year point of time, when this panic thing settles down, then we would again see a kind of reverse transition back to some of the major cities. And it is a cycle. And this has been proved earlier also. When there was a plague in Surat, there was a huge exodus. And after a year or so, Surat still attracts the largest diamond workers in the country. So we just can't take a state now that, hey, things are going back. Is there going to be a void? Yes, there will be a void. People will find other ways to do it, but then it is a time that would come.
Yes. So, Kartik, what are your thoughts on this? This is a huge issue these days.
Yep. I'll answer this in 3 separate parts. The first is with reference to the current situation which we are facing. Yes, there is a shortage of migrant workers, especially in and around cities and in and around industries. I'll give you an example. Only 25 to 30% of the drivers are available for all the transport industries. So suddenly the cost of transport has gone up. Vis-a-vis, we have a lot of, there's a huge shortage of migrant workers at this point of time. So at least if you talk about the big cities and tier 1 cities, the cost of current labor is quite high, and the kind of skilled labor which you require is not available. Just to give an example, in and around Vapi, because it's a big industrial belt, if you need to get these laborers, or you need to bid for the laborers on a daily basis. And if you have to get 5 laborers, out of 5, only 3 will be skilled and 2 will be unskilled completely, but you have to take them as a package. So that's what's happening. And so of course, when you speak about the general people or public, it's a good source of income for them, at least for the local market. But of course, certain industries will be losing it on a short term. So that's the first view. Second point, very crisp point, is just to add to what Nilankur said, because migrant workers are moving back to their villages or small towns, you could possibly see on a shorter term that, the economy could possibly have a slight shift from the focus from the big cities to these places. And till the time, the cycle goes on, or the cycle reverses, this would be a good opportunity for the local districts, the local jillas, or possibly the states to focus more so that they can increase economy in these specific markets. The third thing which I would just like to deviate a bit and just throw light on the situation is, if you would see the news specifically to the US, where the US is trying to cut down all the H-1B visas, all the work visas, they were suspended visas till the end of this year.
Yeah.
companies like Google or Facebook, I'm sure, they've already started looking at other options, where they could hire people across the globe. I mean, someone could be sitting in a small village in Indonesia, who's a good programmer, who could possibly work for Google or work for Facebook or work for Apple and be a programmer. And they don't have to pay. I mean, they are not in the visa system, and they don't have to pay the US salaries. They could possibly pay an Indian salary, but still work as a part of the team with them. I mean, and supporting the current developments which are happening. So generally, I mean, especially, I mean, where you would see that, you're not required to be physically present, especially the technology companies. Tech companies will start have already started looking at taking advantage of situations and hiring people across the globe. So maybe, they could have a nice Lakeview apartment, and it could be in the middle of nowhere with a nice stable internet connection. And they're not required to report to office, not even once a day. And so this is the focus where you would see that, of course, where the I mean, people who are not required to be in office will be hired and employed more in the remote locations. But at the same time, this migrant worker issue is going to be an issue, at least for the next work, which will increase the costs of the industries. And the unfortunate part is it will be very difficult for them to pass on this cost to the market, because the market is not ready to absorb some costs.
Right.
I would just like to add on quickly to this. One positive factor which Economic Times has also been reading out, and other, because of this migrant, and there has been a rural increase in the employment, there is a significant earning potential which is being now looked into the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which was so far being looked as a locked-in potential, but suddenly the floodgates have opened. So it's a good opportunity for the services and retail industry to pitch in there, and if this trend continues for some time.
Interesting. Good. Thank you so much. This is kind of a follow-up question based on what I heard. Wasn't really planned in my head earlier. I think the question is that how much of this, we are talking about remote working, work from home, etc. But while it has made huge news, it has created a lot of news bites. How much of it is possible to be a reality in a country like India, right? Given the workforce being the way it is, given the kind of job roles that are predominant, are we overplaying the narrative of work from home, or it is actually going to be a huge shift from a penetration in the current workforce point of view? It's just a follow-up question, because everybody's talking about work from home, but how much of it can actually be done from home is the question. If everything could have been done from home, then why did the economy come to a standstill? I mean, I know that there are repercussions on demand and consumptions because of the lockdown, but I'm very curious to know your perspective about that.
Ritu, I'll go first since you posed the questions to me. Yes.
Yeah.
If you ask me, work from home is nothing new. It was always there. All right. Now, many of you know, and I'm talking about the industry, which is the technology industry, which is today going gaga, hey, work from home, work from home. Yahoo stopped work from home policy globally when Marissa Mayers took over Yahoo, right? And there were many other organizations in the Silicon Valley started following suit. So I actually believe a fact that everything is not possible from work from home. We do need a workplace, a work environment. But yes, while I completely agree to the term, we are overplaying it, because it is not a medicine which is, kind of a pain relief medicine which goes for all. Work from home, factories may not be working from home, but that is not the case. I would rather like to say that, yes, it should be a flexible working scenario which might become a reality after a point of time. Why flexible? Number one, I completely agree with Kartik. Today, we are in a scenario where people would be spread across the globe in different localities. We will be working a lot with flex employees, even in Indian context, purely in Indian context, which is new for us, right? And having said that, what is really going to become a norm, and that's my personal understanding after reading through it and my understanding in how organization behaviors work, you would have to have a rotational piece. There would be a set of employee who would be required to come to office or come to a work environment, go to a project site or wherever it is for a period of time. It can be a limited period of time. It can happen for some part of a month or few months or weeks or so on and so forth. And again, a second set of employees would come. Yes, pandemic will come and go. It is not going to stay here throughout, right? Maybe a year after this, we would be all reflecting and saying that, hey, whatever we learn now, it is completely a different scenario. And for all we know, things would be a different, back to the older days and normal days, whatever it is. But yes, why India across the globe, 100% work from home? Forget it. I don't even see even 70% of the or 60% of the workforce working from home. Yes, there are certain roles which will become work from anywhere or home. That would be a good cost optimizing in terms of infrastructure management for a commercial for any organizations. But that's about it. That is only going to be a section or part of the entire workforce.
Yes, Kartik, over to you.
I mean, my thought process is, of course, it all depends on the industry. I think it's extremely specific to industry, whether it's a service-related industry, whether it's a manufacturing industry. Of course, factories per se, they can't work from home. You need people at work, people in factories to run the factories. On the other hand, see, how I look at things is people will start looking at options. I'm not sure that these options would be put into actions, but I believe that especially the service-related industries will divide their workforce into three options. One is fully remote, whether this position can work fully remote. Second would be like partially remote, or it could be hybrid remote, whatever you could say, where the person could work from home for certain times of the year, certain times of the day, and has to report into office. And the third person is on site. So specifically, I would say the tech companies would definitely look at these options because, as I mentioned, someone who's fully remote, could possibly stay anywhere in the country or anywhere in the globe and could provide the services. If you also see that one of the main reasons people will also be focusing on these activities is the commercial spaces cost is quite high, and the leases which the companies pay is extremely high. And these are one of the big cost factors. I mean, imagine if you want to own an office space in Bandra Kurla complex or in Nariman Point, it's just over the roof. So rather than having something like this, and one more thing which I would also like to focus upon is for the economy to stabilize, it's going to at least take I think a good few months, maybe a year, maybe more than a year. And in case if a company has to cut costs and not looking at retrenchments at this point of time, so these are the places where they would be looking at. Why do we need to own so much space? Why can't we just give up certain space in the organization, at least for the short time, at least maybe for the next 2 years, and start work from home policies and only have people at work who are required. And so this would not only help the organization, this will also help save jobs in thing within the industry. So these are some things which possibly people would be looking at going ahead. Of course, I think one of your questions was in whether it's fit for the Indian context. I think looking at a larger population, whether the population or whether the workforce is matured enough. Maybe, maybe not. I think this is where I guess you need to start getting, I think, productivity tools, which could basically measure the productivity or the performance of an employee who's working from home. I heard a very interesting fact that one of the ways one of the companies was doing productivity was the number of mouse clicks which has been, which is occurred, or number of times a person is sitting in front of the computer. I guess maybe we need to come up with better ideas which actually measure productivity and not just sitting in front of the PC. So these are some things which definitely will be explored going ahead as the idea of work from home is increasing day by day.
Good. I think interesting. I've been thinking about this, that I of course think that, which I agree with both of you, that it's not that every role can be remote or work from home. It's completely dependent upon industry, job role. I personally believe that the almost 88% of India, which is supposed to be informal workforce, they're informal because they don't work from homes. They're informal because the nature of the work that they have to be done outside of their homes. Unlikely, until and unless there is a massive transformation or formalization, even if it happens, I am unlikely all of them will be sitting indoors. But even with that acceptance of the fact that those job roles will remain outbound in nature, do you think that there is likely to be a change in the way we manage this workforce? Because earlier there would be people sitting in offices trying to manage this workforce, right? Do you think that there would be tools now coming into play? I know there are some tools which already were in existence being used by certain industries, but do you think there would be again digital solutions which help you manage this outbound force remotely without having necessarily having an office through which you manage them? So do you think that's possible? And if yes, how? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Nilankur, will you go take that up?
Sure. There are three aspects to this, Ritu. The first aspect is, yes, we would have to put into some guidelines or policies which are purely employee-centric, outlined by the government, as we increasingly move into the realm of, let me use the word, remote work rather than work from home. It can be work from any locations also. While I say that, we have, and every industry has a huge sales force and service force. And I don't see, and it has never been a norm that they are supposed to report to office every day. There are times people don't report because that's the nature of their work. And they are just reporting and doing their job, and that's about it. Yes, those are very easy and numbers to record a productivity in terms of sales outcome or service outcome. But as we increasingly move into the realm of other roles which gets into the remote management workforce, yes, that is when the digital part and HR policies come in. And yes, increasingly all organizations are bringing in that factor. And it is not just about you are reporting to office. It can be multiple other factors also. So and we will have to again consider that there can be multiple technology disruptions or similar disruptions coming in future. So considering the business continuity plan, how the HR policies shape up. Third, the digital factor, yes. It has been, the field staff has always been using digital, tablets and ways to note. I used to organization where people used to go to a particular location of their and take a photograph with a timestamp and a date stamp, and just for a proof, and that was 10 years back, and that has changed significantly today. So I'm very sure that as and more there are more the digital transformation takes place, it is not that necessarily rightly said, sitting in front of monitor or holding a handheld device will actually decide your productivity. But there are multiple other tools, multiple other connecting methodology, multiple ways to showcase your deliverables, which can be measured. That measurement is using the digital tools to compute that, whereas the HR guidelines to outline that, or let me put it, business guidelines to outline that. So it's a mixture of all these three aspects: the government guidelines, the business guidelines, and combined with it, the tools which gets evolved or which comes into the market.
Thanks so much. Kartik, how do you think, how will we manage this? Because you will have a large workforce which will work outside of homes on the ground, and you might have a much fewer number working from offices. So how does the entire supervision and execution happens with this? And does, again, maybe I'm asking the same point because this is a point which the more we say it, I feel it's still less, because the awareness still is, while COVID has brought about a huge transformation in awareness and acceptance of digital technology, it is still falling short of what could be the need of the hour. So what's your take on that, Kartik?
To be honest, I don't have an expertise on this, because I mean, this is more a question towards HR related activities in terms of how are you going to manage performance in the future. So I personally don't have the expertise. I can only tell you that the way we are managing at this point of time is, because we have frequent calls, follow-ups, and we avoid video calls because it takes up a lot of bandwidth. And as much as possible, it's only the audio calls which we are currently using. For us personally, of course, once everything is online, I think the main thing which we need to check for each and every specific department is, whether you have a paperless department and whether you're required to be in office. I'm sure, certain departments within an organization could be completely made online and digital and without paperless, where all the processes could be routed through ERPs or workflows or online tools. And once you have this in place, if you have online reportings available, if you can see a dashboard in front of you, which you can go and check, how and when the employee has, how the employee has scored with reference to different projects, and the timelines, you can track the projects. If everything is available online, then I don't see this as a challenge. But I'm sure the maturity curve is different for different teams and different companies, and even different teams within the same organization.
It's interesting when you say that this question is an HR question, because I feel that, in my head, I thought productivity of teams and finally is a business question.
No, I think the question which you were referring to is what kind of digital tools will you have, for managing productivity. So I was talking more on that specific front.
Right.
And but I think for the other thing, I guess I've answered your question.
Yes, Kartik. No, that brings me to my, before I start taking the few questions that have come in, I think that brings me to the question, final one. And given that I have one HR person and one non-HR person, it would be interesting to hear your perspective. If the workplaces are changing so rapidly, and if you will have this large outbound workforce and then very little in terms of a corporate office. So what I'm hearing is that the culture of corporate office will be done away with, because corporate office essentially are people who can work from home, and hence there will be no such stuff as big deal about a corporate office. In this kind of a scenario, what is the role of HR? What's the relevance of HR? I mean, if there are no employees to look after, because FaceTime is going to go away. And that's why I'm saying I want an HR perspective and a non-HR perspective. So Nilankur, you can defend HR, and let me hear Kartik on his side.
So it's interesting, and I get this question very often, but surprisingly, I attended one of a seminar way back in 2014 in one of the HR conclaves in Singapore. And one of a digital company made a prophecy over the future HR. And that's exactly where we are today in, you know. Nothing has, significantly changed, as I would rather say. We are still living in the so-called VUCA world. We are still undergoing, or even from Indian perspective or global perspective, there will be rapid changes, disruptions will come in. We have a new set of workforce with Gen Z coming into the workforce, which is till now, yesterday, people used to talk about millennial, now it is the Gen Z. And no one has yet, cracked the code about how to deal with them. But yes, they are extremely connected. We are today and will be, I think, answering your question, we need to be ready to deal with some of the scenarios. We have to accept the world that it is extremely connected. Next, our major part of the workforce will have very little, we'll get a very minor part of their face time or their attention, purely because people want to be connected, not through, of course, one-on-one, but through multiple, if you talk about the new workforce scenarios, compared to us, where we prefer a one-on-one face time and connectivity with our set of people. So that makes HR job a real challenging in the fact is the real mundane HR transactional activity is being automated and will be automated. And I don't think that would that is something we really need to be bothered about. The second part is in terms of policies and processes. That is more of a business policy process, not typical HR policies, because the way the business is shaping and transforming, HR will have to constantly be on it and changes to make it employee-friendly business and adapt to the business. The third part, which is the most important, is we will have this workforce, which is the so-called old generation, the millennial, the Gen Z, and to add to our woes, everyone is connected and the technological, massive transformation. And any kind of transformation has a deep impact on the organization behavior as well as the employee part. Even in terms of, if there was a prophecy that India will witness at least 40 to 50% in across organizations flex staffing. So connecting and engaging with flex staff is equally important. It is not just your full-time employees alone. And that is where I see HR being more innovative in terms of its rewards and benefits, not the standardized rewards benefits. Look into organization structure, which are very dynamic and very fluid, not the structure which we are used to. Look into a very dynamic and diverse workforce. And only thing which is a common thread across is leverage technology to the best possible way in terms of connecting, engaging, and with people and assisting the business to succeed. I don't know if that really answered the question.
It does. I mean, you've obviously given the HR perspective. Let's hear the non-HR perspective.
I think the role of HR is going to increase. It's not going to decrease. Definitely.
He's playing it.
I'll tell you why. See, it's easy. It's always easier for people to sit face to face and have these discussions. But the moment everything turns remote or working from remote locations, I think the way you connect with an employee needs to. I think that's a policy or that's a process that HR needs to develop. Second thing, which people are not focusing a lot is trainings. I mean, all these whiles, we had in classroom training. So how are we going to move away from classroom trainings to online trainings? And so as an HR business partner, people will, I think they will have to really focus on these things. New policies will come into place. And of course, you need someone to draft these policies, whether it's for work from home policies, whether it's performance related policies, productivity policies, and whatnot. I think So that's where I guess, I think, and HR will have to work very closely with IT team to get these things in order. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think I'm sure in a lot of companies, I mean, I mean, it's an open news that British Petroleum will be laying off 10,000 people in the next by the end of this year. That's 15% of the workforce. So when you have these activities coming up, or when you have pay cuts coming up, so this is where I guess HR also comes and plays a big role. You have midterm, I mean, you have midterm assessments, you've got end of the year assessments, and all these things will be done online nowadays. Even though I guess, as Nilankur said, that most of the mundane activities, will move online. But you have, at least at the end of the day, you need someone to do these activities. And when people want to get back to the workplace, it's basically the safety team and the HR team who needs to ensure that the workplace is safe. It's for them to for them to work the way they travel from point A to point B, from their house to the workplace. So putting across all these policies, monitoring and looking at the current situation, I personally feel that HR is only going to get stronger. And I might not completely agree with you, Ritu, on the point that corporate offices will move away.
Yeah,
of course, they might
I
get
agree.
smaller, but you would definitely need corporate offices. You can't invite a client home for a meeting at the end of the day. So it'll get smaller, at least for the short time. But how I see is, as Nilankur said, this is a cycle. Moving ahead, maybe it might get smaller for a year or two, but definitely, I think when things get back to normal and people are not scared anymore, they are okay to travel. It's then things will get bigger, and it's also good for the economy. I mean, if you sit at home, you're not going to spend a lot, and for the economy to thrive, you need people to go out, use their cars, use the public transport, go and spend in the restaurants, and it's only then the economy will thrive. So this is my 2 cents of view on
Great.
this entire topic.
Whatever you have said is great news for the real estate and the builder community, who's otherwise quite panicking quite a bit right now. Yes, you're absolutely right. I don't think the corporate office will go away, but it definitely might shrink. But yes, time will tell about how much shrinkage that would be. I think I'll take a few questions before we wrap up.
Just before you take a question, since Kartik reached out took up an important point of training.
Sure.
Came by an interesting white paper last year, which was published by Marsh, purely on the Indian context, where they had forecasted that by 2025, there are 65 million jobs which is being created purely because of the digital transformation. While that was the good news, the other part was there are around 40 million jobs which needed a rescaling and upscaling. So this is a large potential which cannot just happen through classroom training. You will have to be business, HR, everyone have to join hand to have a digital platforms to upscale and rescale your work. And you just can't make them redundant, for an economy.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks so much. Sachin, you just posted a question in the chat box. Please do share it in the Q&A tab. That would be helpful for us. Thanks so much for the questions. Durga, Mahesh, good to have you back. I think one of the questions which I'll take, which is being raised by Durga, which I thought is quite relevant. In this current scenario, which is quite unique, should the benefit of doubt be extended to employees on few HR parameters? Example, attendance to those who cannot turn up to work for genuine reasons, their performance, contribution, deliverables, full compensation, etc., or that is not the right practice. So yeah, any one of you, whoever wants to take that question.
I'd go first for it. See, one thing for a fact is there are certain hygiene issues, all right? The basic ethical values for which it is just not HR, it is the entire business. It runs because of that fact, and that is expected from an employee. So yes, if there are certain hygiene factors, and I'm not just saying about attendance, I'm saying for certain basic deliverables, these are not HR parameters. These are business parameters. So yes, performance and productivity should be purely on the business parameter based on the new business scenario, and those parameters would be applicable for all employees. It is not, yes, it may not be due to what time you're logging in into your computer. Maybe that may seem very frivolous now, but for a smaller business, that is what it may count. So let us accept a fact. Let's give credit to the size and the entire business modality and decide on their performance contributions. But yes, I completely agree. What was their earlier scenario may not be applicable today in totality. And of course, if there is a general reason for someone not able to turn up for work, even in earlier scenarios, it was exceptions used to be given. But then exceptions cannot be the norm today, until unless that becomes a business strategy and the business way of doing things.
Kartik, you want to add to that?
No further comments. I guess I already touched upon this during, I think, my talk earlier.
Sure. With interesting one, I think anyone can take that. Will there be a geographic border shrinkage due to COVID situation? And the second part of the question is, does campus recruitment lose its value?
I'll take that if you don't mind,
Yeah,
Nilankur.
sure.
Thank you. I think, as I mentioned, there could be a geographical shrinkage. Of course, it depends on the type of work which you're working, especially the service-related activities, and especially the tech jobs and coding jobs. They'll see a shrinkage. I think I did mention an example where Google and Facebook hiring across the globe, and they could be just sitting at home with their. So the only investment they could possibly be doing would be a good computer, stable internet connection, and that's it. That's possible, and a good phone. I think with all these three activities, and you can be connected 24/7. So we could see a geographical shrinkage, but it will be limited to specific industries. At the end of the day, if it's a manufacturing firm where people are required to be in office, you would have to definitely report back. This will also help big companies to save costs and remunerate better to their employees in these situations where, as I mentioned, an average coder's salary in California would be close to about $150,000. But if the same company employs someone in India, maybe they'll have to pay 1/10 of the cost, maybe a shade higher for the same amount of job which you're doing. What this also could entail is, people will be working in different shifts. It's not necessary that people will be working their regular shift. It could be a night shift, it could be an afternoon shift. But when you're working from, you can always adjust to these timings. With reference to campus recruitments, see again, it will to an extent. I'll possibly take a step back with now countries, curbing on visas, or you will have, especially you can expect that, a lot of colleges in the US might shut down because they're basically dependent on foreign students coming and working for them, foreign studying them, because, they would want a job in the US. But now when you're not going to job, people are going to think about looking at other option. Maybe this could be a good opportunity for other countries. See, campus recruitments, how I would look at it is definitely you would need people. You would definitely need people going ahead, just that the skill set of the people would change. So instead of having a face-to-face interview, people will start having, people now will have a lot of Skype interviews, a lot of video conferencing. But especially if you're good and if you're from the top B school, I don't think you should be really worried about it.
Good. I think I'll move on to the rapid fire questions. Nilankur, I'll start with you. When do we go back to the pre-COVID level of growth in India? This is like an overall assessment.
At least 18 months from now.
Okay. Would there be less jobs in the next 12 months?
No, there'll be more jobs.
Excellent. Would average wages be going down?
No, because of a lot of transition of workers. Rather, in certain sectors, it will be inflation. like Kartik pointed out. And for others, definitely people will remain more of a status quo.
Right. So also, do you think there would be an antibiotic reactions from organizations, a much bigger antibiotic reactions from organization to anything permanent, whether it is real estate, whether it's wage structures or employees?
There'll be some knee-jerk reaction for a very temporary phase, but the larger enterprise or organizations with a long vision, definitely in 18 months, no reactions would take place. Everyone would like to wait and watch.
Okay. So how many of your guest workers or migrant workers have left?
We per se don't have that in our projects. We have a large amount of contractors. As per my understanding, we have not yet faced that crisis because these are mostly skilled workers or highly skilled workers because the nature of business we are.
Sure. So with this whole new phenomena that have hit us, how much percentage of your workforce is likely to permanently move to work from home?
As of now, we are going in phases. We are taking a term for around the next 12 months. We might get back entire 100% back to work, or we may just ensure that 30 to 35%, I'm talking about a final outcome, may remain working, 30 to 35% remain working from home. And then there are a set of field staff. So we would still have around 40, 50 or to 50 odd percent of people who are required to work from office because of the nature of the job.
Interesting. So thanks so much. That brings us to an end to your rapid fire questions. Now, Kartik, same questions for you.
Yeah.
When do we go back to the pre-COVID level of growth?
I wish I had a crystal ball in front of me, but I think, as I said, I think by the time things settle down, I think it'll be somewhere in mid 2022.
Okay. Would there be less jobs in the next 12 months?
I'm not sure there'll be less jobs, but I think it'll be a status quo.
Okay. And would there be a dip in average wages in the next 12 months?
With reference to, I think with reference to the migrant workers and unskilled workers and semi-skilled workers, definitely there'll be a hike in the wages because of the shortage of laborers in the market. With reference to, I think the white collar jobs, it's going to be, I think it's going to be constant, or it could be, or there could be a possible dip depending on the industry and depending on how the companies are performing. And definitely, I think the kind of bonuses, kind of increments which we have seen in the last few months will take a definite hit.
Would there be a much greater antibiotic reaction from organization towards permanent real estate, wages, employees now after COVID?
Could you rephrase your question?
So essentially, would there be an antibiotic reactions from corporates, organizations towards anything permanent in nature, whether it's permanent real estate, permanent wage structures, permanent employees?
Actually, no, because people don't know how the market is going to react. To be really honest, the big countries like India, US, and Brazil have still not hit the peak yet. So we still don't know, how long this entire situation is going to continue. So unless and until there's clarity with reference to either vaccines or with reference to when the COVID situation is going to stabilize, I don't think people are going to take any specific permanent decisions on this. People will wait and watch. I think it should be towards somewhere in Q1, where people will start reviewing the situation.
Thanks. So how many of your guest workers or migrant workers have left work? Have gone back home?
I wish not to answer that question.
Okay. And how much percentage of your workforce would be permanently working now from home?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. I'm sorry.
So I think that brings us to an end to today's session of the 1 hour webinar. We've overshot the time miraculously by just 11 minutes. So we've done well. I think this dialogue has to continue. There are many questions, honestly, that I would like to ask all of you But I guess that we'll have to leave that for another day and time. Thank you so much for joining in. It's interesting times ahead. And I like the fact that both of you are optimistic about the future. Let me put it cautiously optimistic about the future. And that's enough for now, I guess. As long as we are optimistic in some form, I think it augurs well for the future. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Sorry, we'll see you again next Tuesday, 11 o'clock at the same time with few more experts and some more interesting discussions and dialogues. Thanks so much, Kartik. Thanks, Nilankur.
Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Nilankur.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, the participants, and please stay safe.
Yeah, bye.